Welcome to the Justice Show. I'm your host, Brennan Goswami, bringing to you live from Republic of Israel TV. Yes, and today we have a very exciting topic for you. We are going to be discussing the disciples in Mark. Yes, the nation wants to know, the country wants to know, the whole world wants to know how exactly were the disciples in Mark. And to discuss that very topic, we have an exciting panel of panelists. Here they are before you. We have Atul of Arimathea, Kristen of Antioch, Sister Asmita of Magdala, Caesar Augustus, Bibin of Bethany, and coming all the way from Jerusalem via satellite, we have Christopher of Jerusalem. And via satellite from Rome, we have the renowned biblical scholar, Sir Bernard Raymond Brown from Biblicum. So I welcome all our guests to the show. Now to begin, let us listen to the renowned biblical scholar, Sir Bernard Raymond Brown, all the way from Biblicum, Rome. Sir, can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, Mr. Swami, I can hear you.
Okay, good, sir. Dr. Raymond Brown, could you please tell us something about the disciples in Mark?
In his gospel, Mark portrays the disciples as paradoxical characters who, though committed to following Jesus, fall short of their expectation in following behind their master, Jesus.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to bring in Atul of Arimathea. Go ahead, sir.
In Mark chapter 1, verse 16 to 20, we see the immediate and wholehearted response of Peter, Andrew, James and John when Jesus called them to follow him.
Caesar Augustus, how would you respond?
Well, the socio-political environment influenced the expectation of Jesus as a political leader or liberator. See, we can see clearly in Mark chapter 10, verse 35, that those two brothers, namely James and John, asking Jesus to sit at his right and left, and this shows their worldly and political dreams.
Oh, that's very interesting. Kristen of Antioch, how do you respond?
Mark's story portrays the disciples as devout as well as loyal to Jesus. They fulfill his promise by becoming fishers of men, by leaving their jobs and family to follow Jesus, as we see in Mark chapter 1 and 2. They proclaim, exercise and heal people when Jesus dispatches them, as we see in Mark chapter 6 verses 7 to 30. They also regularly follow Jesus' instructions, as we see in the instance like they go when he summons them, take him in the boat, they protect him from the crowds, they assist him in the desert feedings, and find a donkey for him by perfectly following his instructions, as we see in Mark chapter 11 verses 1 to 11, and towards the end they prepare the Passover meal, as we see in Mark 14. In essential, or in short, they go with him and were loyal to Jesus.
Now let's go to Jerusalem and see what Christopher of Jerusalem has to say. Christopher, can you hear me? I think there's some problem with the audio. Christopher, can you hear me?
Yes. Now I can hear you. Yeah, let me tell you. In Mark chapter 14, verse 27 to 31, Jesus predicts Peter will deny him for 3 times. Despite Peter's initial confidence in his loyalty, he ends up denying knowing Jesus during his trial. That shows that disciples' weakness in their commitment. And also on the way to Jerusalem, Jesus predicted his death 3 times. Each time, the response of the disciples was dramatic denial and avoidance. In Mark chapter 8, verse 31 to 38, chapter 9, 30 to 32, chapter 10, verse 32 to 34, the response reveals that they followed Jesus hoping for power, status, and wealth, not for suffering.
Oh, these are very serious allegations being made against the disciples. Asmita of Magdala, what do you say?
Despite their shortcomings, the disciples display growth and learning. Over time, they begin to exhibit a deeper understanding of Jesus' teaching and mission. Through his parables and private explanations, Jesus nurtures their understanding, laying the foundation of their future roles as leaders of the early church. And Jesus gave them authority over unclean spirits.
Okay, Bibin of Bethany, how do you respond?
What authority did they have? In Mark 9:18, we see that they can't cast out the deaf and dumb spirit from the boy. In Mark 6:52, we can see the incomprehension of the disciples to understand they couldn't understand about the bread and the walking on water. In Mark 4:13, Jesus shows their lack of understanding and explains the parable of the sower.
Atul of Arabithia wants to say something. Go ahead, Atul.
Peter's declaration about Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verse 29, shows a moment of profound spiritual insight and conviction. This declaration, where Peter confesses that Jesus is a Messiah, shows disciples' growing understanding of Jesus as a Savior.
But what is the use of that declaration? Immediately after, in Mark chapter 8, verse 32, we see Peter tries to oppose Jesus' passion, and Jesus tells him, "Get behind me, Satan." See, further, one could argue that the disciples' declaration of Jesus as the Christ might be viewed as an expression of faith and loyalty, rather than complete understanding.
Oh, this debate is getting very interesting. Come on, closing comments. We don't have time anymore. Quickly, Christopher of Jerusalem, what do you have to say?
The disciples were not even able to understand and believe in him till the very end. In Mark 16:14, we see that when Jesus appeared to the 11 after his resurrection, he rebuked for their lack of faith.
Yes, they had no faith, and their hearts are hardened till the end.
Okay, closing comments. Asmita of Magdala.
In Mark 16:15, Jesus commissions his disciples to go and proclaim the gospel to all the world and preach the good news to the whole creation.
Rhodes and Michi, in their book, Mark as a Story, argues that the disciples play a dual role, that is, mimetic and didactic.
Do you know the meanings of those words?
Yes, of course, I know the meanings. As you can see, mimetic means that disciples serve as a mirror image for the reader. That is, they reflect back their own struggles, difficulties and doubts. While didactic means the disciples also function as teachers, demonstrating how to follow Jesus and live the Christian life meaningfully.
Okay, we are completely out of time. I have to give the last word to our eminent scholar, Sir Bernard Raymond Brown. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Goswami. After listening to all your guests, I would have to say that they are right. Both sides are all correct.
But how can that be possible?
Wait, hear me out. There is no doubt that in the Gospel of Mark, the disciples are incomprehensible because they don't understand Jesus since their hearts are hardened. However, it is these same disciples who are commissioned by Christ to spread the Gospels. And so, the message for us here is that despite all our weaknesses and misunderstandings, God still calls us to preach the good news to the ends of the world. Amen.
Very well said, Sir Bernard. It is just like the disciples that we are called to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. Despite all our weaknesses, it is truly and rightfully said, God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. So that's it for me tonight. Stay tuned to Israel TV network for the greatest and latest gospel news.